Hello, this week is about the varying levels of pain and wounding and explain to you who possibly might be running your life or what possibly might be running your life. Welcome to the Mindfuckery podcast, which is FeedSpot's fifth must listen to podcast on emotional abuse. I'm your host, Elizabeth, and in here we explore areas others fear to tread. I'm a woundologist and I have been for over 20 years, working with past life wounds, clearing ancestral trauma and working with this life wounding. Through my own personal journey, I know how much this hurts and how confusing life becomes. So many questions, no real answers. I'm the author of Finding Lily, which I wrote in Greece as my marriage was crumbling around me. The A to Z of emotional abuse followed as I discovered new words and language and phrases that I had no idea existed, and I realised were now my reality. My third book, Divorce Matters, has been written to support you through the divorce process. It's a really important part. You can get the closure you need to heal the emotional wounds, and because your divorce matters are really important as well, it gives you permission to ask for the information you've been told not to ask for. I'm the founder of the Inner Healing Sanctuary and creator of Wound Talking, The Original Wound and Quantum Glow Healing. And I'm on a mission to educate as many people as I can on the effects of trauma in our lives and our children's lives and healing the wounds of our mothers and our fathers. It stops here, it stops now, it stops with us. So welcome along for the journey of a lifetime. And you are very, very welcome. So this week I want to talk about wounds. And I want to explain to you through something that happened to me a couple of weeks ago, how they land in your body. And then I'm hoping that you'll be able to see what's running your life and be able to take a step back and ask yourself a few questions. I'm away at the moment and I'm staying in a cottage and I've just listened back and it's a little bit echoey. There's no echo on the mic, so please bear with. I think it must be the room and the acoustics. Okay, so nearly 2 weeks ago, I had this epic fall. Now, I don't know whether you've experienced that. There is part of me that wished that I could have seen what I'd done. I was walking down some stairs, completely distracted. I was reading something on my phone, so it really was dangerous. And I took a step forward thinking I was at the bottom. You might have done the same thing or something similar. And there wasn't a step there. Only I think I might have been 2 steps up because I literally went flying. I landed on a concrete floor. Everything slowed down. And I don't know whether it can't have been my body that slowed down. Somehow my mind must have speeded up because I was able to make some really good judgment calls as I was propelling through the air. And I literally did propel through the air. I landed on both my knees and I landed against a pallet of water. There were small water bottles that were in cellophane. And I landed again, and I could see that was where I was headed. And I managed to turn my head to avoid literally smashing my face into it. And I must have dropped my phone at some point because that was on the floor. But obviously it happened really quickly. I got myself up, somebody came to help me and I was like, no, I'm okay. And I walked off and then I thought, oh gosh, actually, I'm not okay. I'm really not. I felt really shaky, etc., etc. Why am I telling you this? Because most of it's gone. I didn't have any bruises. I did find one and I had a graze to one of my knees. The rest of it, I could feel it was muscular. And I know what I've done. I knew how I got there. I knew the pain. Emotional abuse, narcissistic abuse is exactly the same as that fall. It's done very slowly. And I used to talk about this a lot and I've written about it in the A to Z. It turns you crazy. These words and phrases and things that you experience, things you see, land in your body like physical wounds. The worst part for me was my arms. I can still feel a little bit tender in my arms where I've tried to really stop myself from crashing into this case. I know what I've done because I was there, I witnessed, I was part of this fall. With emotional abuse, we don't do that. We don't see that. We perhaps don't even know that that's taken place until it's pointed out, until you tell somebody something and they look at you and you think, oh, okay, maybe that's not normal behaviour. Now, for me, my belief is that the person that came into your life that is creating the chaos or has created chaos, that has challenged you, that has broken down every boundary, is there to help you heal. I used to have a cat, a tomcat, and he was half wild from the moment he was born. I had his mum, and we also kept his brother. He had two sisters who went off together to another family, but he was nearly wild when he was born. As a small kitten, if you went to pick him up, he'd hiss at you. He used to disappear. I couldn't get him down to the vet because I could hardly catch him, but he used to come in and spray the area. So I'd walk in the kitchen because that's what he had access through a cat flap, and I'd smell and I go, oh gosh, but I couldn't track it down. Didn't know where this smell was coming from. We also had a dog at the time. He would come in and he would pinpoint exactly where this was because he'd sniff it out. And to me, this cat spray it sounds really a weird analogy, but to me, that's what is the wound or something that's happened. Now, it could be a childhood wound, it could be ancestral wounding, it could be past life wounding, and then the narcissist comes along, much like the dog, and sniffs out this wound. Oh, I recognise that. And what they do is they hurt you. They replicate a situation or they replicate a relationship, and they give you this opportunity to heal. Now, it depends where you are at the moment on your journey. It might be that you literally feel that it would be safer back in the relationship than it is out because it hurts so much. It might be that you are waiting for an apology because you haven't had closure. It might be that you want all of the people that have sided with the emotional abuser to say, oh my gosh, you're right, he or she is the most awful person ever walked the earth, and they've done exactly the same to me. What's the likelihood of that happening? If you could gauge that out of 10, what the likelihood of somebody reaching out and saying, I got it all wrong, I'm sorry, I believed him or her over you, it's probably really, really low, unless they're in a lot of pain, unless they are going through exactly what you've been through and they're just looking for someone to reach out and make contact. You're not going to get the validation. And what's holding you back from healing is this wounding. Now, I work with this life wounding, I work with ancestral wounding and past life wounding. And my journey started with wounds, and specifically with wounds. The empath in me, who I always see as the damaged child who was on high alert all the time and lived in that state. I believe I was lucky. I was a bit of a daydreamer, and I think I was that child that stared out the window at school. So maybe it wasn't lucky because I couldn't function on that level that I needed to in that environment. I feel that I dodged a lot of abuse that could have hit me, but I might be wrong. As I said in last week's podcast, and if you get my newsletter, I did some more healing work. That was just over a week ago with two horses, Bill and Athena. So if you haven't heard that story, I did speak about it on the podcast a little bit, and also in the newsletter. You can get a copy, drop me a line and I'll forward it on to you. In 2002, I had been through the separation. I wasn't divorced, but a separation from my first husband. I had two children with him. I had a son from a physically abusive relationship prior to meeting this man, and I had two children with this guy. We weren't divorced. That was something else to look forward to, and further manipulation. Prior to this separation, I had been down this route of really jumping in with both feet into the spiritual side. I needed to leave the workplace that I was in for different reasons that I told people that I'm only able to admit a long time later. And I retrained in Reiki. I did my Reiki 1, I did my Reiki 2, I did an Indian head massage course. I then took a full body massage course and my anatomy and physiology. I trained in reflexology, just the list went on. And at some point my marriage broke down and I came across this course called Past Life Energetics, and from there I went and redid my Reiki again with this woman, and I trained in different areas. I did different days with her. But Past Life Energetics is about the wounding, the emotional wounding that we bring in from other lifetimes, and it might not be something that you believe in, but it was very powerful. That was in 2002, and I was still practicing with the body massage. I was working at a spa up at one of the airports. What I wanted to do was help people who had been in stressful environments. I wanted to help relieve that stress because I know how damaging it was to the psyche, to the soul, to the mind, and to the body. And I retrained as a spiritual life coach in 2010 and did a lot more modalities. And then I got involved in epigenetics and I got involved in ancestral healing. And I was doing that for quite a while. And then I was able to combine everything. And the work and the way I work is I just get this information. I just know intuitively in my body. When I work with someone, I'm usually able to feel where their wounding is in their body. And like my fall, the emotional pain that I went through in my personal journey, there was a lot of healing that needed to be done. And so when my second husband turned up on the scene, started saying things and making comments, and they were very slight comments that I started to write off after a while. There were the 3 red flags, and then the 4th one I overrode, and that was it. He got the combination into my hard drive, and he was then able to hit various different buttons. Once the relationship was over, once that marriage was over, the second marriage, I was able to see the correlation. I'd seen it. I'd seen the patterns. I didn't have the information to heal at that point. When you get to a point of understanding, inner standing is what I like to say. When I inner stand, when I go inside, my body says yes or my body says no. My body talks to me. It tells me when it's not happy. So who and what is running your life? What I found during my second divorce was that I had wounds of injustice. I have wounds that were actually running my divorce. I had children in my life that were my inner child hurting and crying out, and they needed attention. So when I hear people say things like they are waiting for an apology, or the best thing that could happen to them at the moment is that they get a message from the abuser saying, I'm really sorry, that isn't going to happen, because they never see anything as being their fault. Because of them being so insecure, they couldn't take that responsibility because it means there's something wrong with them. And in their mind, they reframe everything that there's nothing wrong with them. There's a wounding inside that person who is desperate for an apology. And if you can dig down, you will find out what it is. And that is just asking lots of different questions and finding out where it really comes from, because it won't come from that relationship. It comes from a younger time, a child that might have been abandoned by a parent, or betrayed by a parent, or shamed by a parent. And when I talk about ancestral wounding, what I'm talking about is the way that you were brought up. You've got 2 adults that come together with 2 different histories, 2 different stories, and they come together and they create a family. Some of those relationships work, some don't. But each one has a different way of parenting because of the journey they had with their parents. And that comes down to this programming that happens between birth and up to 7 or 8 years old. So everything we take on during that time is the truth to us. We have no other way of working out what's real and what's not real. We believe that our parents, on a subconscious level, know what they're doing. Not everybody does. I can't remember what the book was called now. It was something like The Rules of Life. And the guy that wrote it, I know it's black and like lime green. And one of them, or it might have been Rules for Being a Parent or something. And he said he had children in various ages at that point, from the ages of 15 right down to about 5. And one of his children said, but you're supposed to know this stuff. And he said, but I've never had a 15-year-old before, so I'm also learning this as well. That's what happens. Our parents are learning. The life that they live, or the way that they lived, is completely different to the way that society is now. Every 20 years is a different generation going through. So if you are in that position and you can see or feel that something else is running your life, whether it's a young child, which was also happened to me. I remember receiving, this is actually one of the bigger, most pivotal moments in my healing. I've received some information. I can't remember whether I got a letter or an email through. I wanted to cry, but I didn't have the energy to cry. There was nothing really left. And I just desperately at that point wanted to reach out to my estranged husband. I'd received this notification and I was just really upset. And actually, when I had this conversation with myself, I discovered it was a 3-year-old. She just wanted attention. She wanted to know that everything was okay. And I was able to do that for her. I was able to reassure her. And that was a pivotal moment in my healing. I was still grounding. I was still, I had my story. I actually used to write that out multiple times, or different versions of it, or different parts of it. I didn't write the whole thing out, which I say to people now, do it. So you can actually, so you're not sitting there going, oh, this is all my fault. This is all my fault. You can pull out the timeline and say, oh, wow, actually, no, I can see the abusive relationships that they were in before. I can see the crazy exes, all those crazy exes that they had that they've told me about. That's what the story does for you. It sort of bolts you back onto your timeline, drags you back in and says, stay here. Don't go back because you've come so far. So these relationships for me are like the narcissist is the dog and your wounding is the cat that was going around spraying. And the dog's able to sniff out, like the narcissist's able to sniff out the wound. And to me, that's what you can now do, is take that wounding. But the problem is that you've been reprogrammed and they've got the combination to that. They've set it. And it's now about challenging a lot of these thoughts that you've got. They were able to convince you that this was all your fault. They were able to do that. And I've said right from the beginning, when I started on my YouTube channel, when I wrote the book, The A to Z, I can't remember whether I wrote about this in Finding Lily, actually, because I put some healing modalities in there. To me, this is, you look in the mirror and say, right, what can I do for me? This is about taking responsibility for your healing, for your wounding. They spotted that wound and they've sprayed that area for you. And so you can go and sniff it out. Maybe I got the dog and the cat round the wrong way. There's a wounding that's happened and they've sprayed that area. So we now need to go and sniff it out. That's probably a better way of doing it, actually. It didn't feel right when I was saying it the other way around. You have been given this chance. It's huge and you can change your life. And I know that if you're right at the beginning, it's really painful. Even in the middle, it's really painful. If you're divorcing them, you can even get that divorce certificate and still be in loads of pain because there's no closure. It hasn't been finalised. You've been told this is your fault, but it doesn't make sense that it's your fault. That's because it isn't your fault. But what has happened is there's a wounding that you have. And it's like they've come in and sprayed this area and said, it's here, you need to come and look at this. It's over here. And you've been given that opportunity. I hope that you're able to take that and heal and change your life. So if you'd like an opportunity to work with me, please reach out. I'll put the links on my website. You can work with me one-to-one. I will very shortly be launching a group program and I will let you know about that as well very shortly. As always, sending you loads and loads of love until next time.